Max, what happened? Why have you been decertified as a student organization? And what is Students for Justice in Palestine attempting to do?
We have been suspended as an organization because the administration feels that they can no longer control our activities. And this is the best option they have left.
And what are the violations, repeated violations, they claim that you've been engaged in?
I think it's insubordination is what their claim is, that they said it's a pervasive rule violation. But what really happened was we distributed a bunch of flyers, and the Hillel organization on my campus lost their temper and pressured the university into calling the police on us.
Now, Max, you're a Jewish student, part of Northeastern University Law School with the group Students for Justice in Palestine. Explain this last act that you didn't get permission for. Explain why you did distribute these, mock eviction notices that you slipped under residents' doors, students' doors?
Yes, Amy. I mean, it's important to understand in the context of the greater repression of our activities. Prior to our official suspension, we were suspended in everything but name. We were constantly thwarted and deprived funding. Our events were moved around and roadblocks were put up. The only recourse we had, the last educational activity we could engage in, was a sort of direct action where we didn't need university funding or a university space. We went door to door and slipped mock eviction notices under people's door, but we were careful because we wanted to simulate the sort of common Palestinian experience of coming home to find that your residency and existence has been criminalized.
Ali Abunim, I wanted to ask you this. What the students in Northeastern are facing increasingly across academia, professional organizations of professors, as well as other universities, the battle is raging now against the supporters of self-determination for the Palestinians.
Absolutely. What's happening at Northeastern is part of a much bigger war on campus that's being waged by university administrations and by pro-Israel organizations. I mean, in addition to the harassment the students at Northeastern are going through, I mean, right now I'm scheduled to speak at Northeastern on April 1 as part of this book tour. And now we don't know, can that event go ahead? Am I banned from campus because the student group can't book rooms or get resources? This is what it's about. It's about shutting down the discussion. And the group, the off-campus group that has been harassing students at Northeastern, is an extreme right-wing group called Americans for Peace and Tolerance, founded by an extreme Islamophobe called Charles Jacobs. He's the founder of another group called the David Project, which is taking this war national. And they have said that campuses in this country are the main arena where support for Israel has to be rescued and saved. And the David Project, as I write in the Battle for Justice in Palestine, has said that the war on Palestine solidarity must effectively be a war on the broader left and progressive movement, because that's where support for Palestine is nurtured.
At the student level, polls show across the country that especially young Jewish students are much more now critical of the state of Israel and identifying with the plight of Palestinians.
Exactly, because young Jewish students in this country, like all young students, identify with universal human rights and equality. And that's why we've got legislatures in New York, in Illinois, in Maryland, even the United States Congress now considering bills to penalize universities if students or faculty express support for the Palestine solidarity movement in the form of the boycott of Israeli academic institutions. It really is a free speech emergency. And just this week in New York City, at Columbia University, at Barnard College, students had gotten permission. They'd gone through all the authorizations to put up a banner that said, "Stand with justice in Palestine, and the university administration took it down after complaints from pro-Israel groups and basically said, we're not going to allow any more banners. Free speech is losing out to support for Israel on our campuses when administrations are left in charge of people's rights. That's why we have to stand by the students at Northeastern and all over this country.
Well, and meanwhile, Israel has launched its most intense bombing of the Gaza Strip since the assault of late 2012. Around 30 Israeli attacks have hit Gaza since Wednesday, following a barrage of Palestinian rocket fire. No casualties have been reported on either side. The group Islamic Jihad has claimed responsibility for the people. Ali, could you talk about this latest escalation in the actual conflict there?
Well, you mentioned the November 2012 assault by Israel, which killed 170 Palestinians. That ended with a ceasefire agreement between Israelis and the Palestinian resistance factions in Gaza. Israel has incessantly violated that ceasefire and has been escalating its so-called targeted killings, extrajudicial executions in recent weeks. And I think what we saw yesterday was an attempt by Palestinian groups in Gaza to say, look, if Israel keeps violating the ceasefire, we have the capacity to hit back. But I don't think there's anyone in Gaza that wants to see a total breakdown of the ceasefire agreement.
What about the so-called peace talks between Israel and Palestine that John Kerry is presiding over? How much faith do you put in them, Ali?
As much as John Kerry, which is none. I mean, John Kerry was caught by a reporter the other day in a private moment saying that his talks with Netanyahu were going absolutely nowhere. I think the significant thing, and what's really happening now, is, look at the fact that when Netanyahu was speaking to the Israel lobby AIPAC, he spent a third of his speech condemning the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, because this is really what's changing the equation. It's grassroots activism in this country, in Palestine, and all over the world.
Now, it's an interesting quote. When the Prime Minister of Israel addressed AIPAC, he said, those who wear the BDS label should be treated exactly as we treat any anti-Semite or bigot. They should be exposed and condemned. The boycotters should be boycotted. I want to go back to Max Geller. The equating of those critical of the Israeli state or the Israeli military with being anti-Semitic or being a bigot. Your thoughts on that?
I mean, especially in the university context, it's deeply troubling. It's deeply troubling to demonize a viewpoint before one can debate it, especially in a university context. The Israeli-Palestinian question remains difficult to answer, and if those answers are not going to come from the academy, I don't know where they're going to come from. And to render a certain subject taboo is to deprive the students on campus of important perspectives when they crucial to making informed decisions. It's very troubling. And Amy, I think it's really important to understand that Northeastern students put up flyers where they're not supposed to every day. Every day, every student at Northeastern walks by flyers that weren't authorized to be put up. But the only time you ever hear about students being disciplined for it is when the content contains pro-Palestinian messages.
And Max, what are the plans for your group? Are you going to challenge this ban at all, or how are you going to continue to function or operate in the future?
Well, I'm pleased to say that the outpouring has been overwhelming. We have received in less than 24 hours over 3,500 signatures to our petition. And we are right now considering the most spectacular way of delivering these petitions to the president's door. We have had student groups who are pretty apathetic. I mean, politically speaking, the debate team has offered to engage in a walkout of class on SJP's behalf, and it's been really inspiring and moving. But we are still trying to figure out the best way to sort of catch this lightning in a bottle and force the university's hand.
Ali Abunimah, we just have about 45 seconds. The title of your book is The Battle for Justice in Palestine. Do you hold out any hope?
Well, I hope people will look at this book, because while I think the battle is raging in Palestine and in this country, on campuses and everywhere where people are gathering, I have a lot of hope. And in the end, this is a book about what the future looks like, a future based on equality, anti-racism, and decolonization in Palestine, where everyone can live because people are sick and tired of this conflict and the violence that comes with it.